Ah, good afternoon, folks. I'm real late to work on this first day of the year, 2023. Well, Happy New Year. Welcome to Awakening Israel, where the most important thing is awakening our brothers and sisters in Israel. To that ends, please like and subscribe, comment, and share these videos. If you want to support me, I have one product for sale. That's the best Bible in the world. Proper name version of the King James Bible. There are 5 different formats available. And following that link at the bottom will take you to the lowest prices available anywhere. So rather than donating money, I ask you to buy my Bibles. Give me the opportunity to work. Give me the opportunity to provide you with more value than you provide me. Bibles are at a very reasonable price. The most expensive one is like $57.77, I think, or something along that order. And that would be a large print black leatherette copy with tabs in it. If you're a novice, I highly recommend getting one of those. The tabs will make it easier for you to get your way around. All prices ending in 77 cents are the lowest available, and I do get a stipend off of those. Appreciate that. Thank you. Those of you who bought the Bibles, I appreciate it. I had a donation that came through as well, and I really need to go learn, look at the names. I'm not very good with names anymore, as you probably already know, and as you'll find out. I wasn't good at recalling names when I was younger as a psychologist, and that's a miserable trait to have as a psychologist. You know, one of the good things about records in front of you, working for proper records, is that you got names in front of you. The other thing is you've got all those cues from previous sessions that will remind you, especially when you see keywords for interventions and things that you've tried, or awarenesses you've tried to instill and to anchor into the client. That helps as well. I really tried to prepare a show for you today. I had a bunch of things cross my mind, cross my desk, so to speak, that I wanted to bring. But as I try to prepare for a show, I screw up, and the show just doesn't go well. So I find that doing a stream of consciousness and just being myself and being very candid and honest with you is going to work better than anything else. The other thing is that it's not me that this focus is on, although it is because you got me in front of you. But it really is this new Bible. And it is the Bible that we want to focus upon. If you read the Bible, of course, it'll speak to you differently than it speaks to me, and you will pull for... There we go. There's the cover, the title pager. Okay. It'll speak to you differently than it speaks to me, and that's fine. Some things we're going to want to agree on that are pretty important. Other things we're okay with disagreeing on those things. Give you an example of something that's okay to disagree about is, was Noah's flood local or was it worldwide? So I really don't care which side of the fence you're on that one, because at some point we're going to know. That's the outlook I have, and when we get there, hopefully we'll all be in agreement on that. But it's not that important in certain senses. In other senses, it might be very important. I also bring up quite a bit about psychology. Psychology being the study of the soul. It's kind of important. I do have in front of me a publication. It's not the study itself, but it was basically a study conducted in 1954 and replicated 25 times. So we know the results and what those describe in particular. This psychologist working at National Institutes of Mental Health in 1954 launched several experiments, and he came up with what he described as rat utopia or rodent utopia, which rapidly became hell. I'm going to read you what was observed. Now, Remember that he replicated this 25 times. Slight variations, sure, and most of the time probably the same, because we always want to replicate experiments to prove that we've got the right conclusions and to see if there's any variance in the results. So, in this case, the one thing they did not have was space. He allowed the population to grow to 80 in the first instance. And he did different sizes, and I don't really want to get into that, but what I want to get into is what developed. And remember, these are rodents. As the scientists observed, a social hierarchy developed. One despot male and 9 females claimed the 2 defensible pens with only 1 ramp provided. So they claimed their territory. So 1 male and 9 females. 60 others crowded into the other 2 pens with 2 ramps, more access to it. You couldn't defend those as easily. Calhoun found that rodent utopia rapidly became hell, as he quoted it. He described the onset of several pathologies, violence and aggression, with rats in the crowded pen, quote, going berserk, attacking females, juveniles, and less active males, close quote. There was also, quote, sexual deviance. Rats became hypersexual, pursuing females relentlessly, even when not in heat. The mortality rate among females was extremely high. A large proportion of the population became bisexual, then increasingly homosexual, and finally asexual, not having sex at all. There was a breakdown in maternal behavior. Mothers stopped caring for their young, stopped building a nest for them. And even began to attack them, resulting in 96% mortality rate in the 2 crowded pens. Calhoun coined a term, behavioral sink, to describe the decay. He clearly saw these rats and mice as models for man. Life in an unattended urban environment was ever-increasing density could result in the complete devastation of humanity. So that's what they're doing, is they're crowding us into our smart cities, which is not very smart, but it's smart of them because their goal is not to give us heaven, it's to give us hell on earth. It's our job to give them heaven on the earth. Now, don't get me wrong, we're going to have to get rid of them. We're going to have to establish the kingdom of heaven upon the earth. That is what I believe is meant in the end when the Apostle John in the book of Revelation says, and he saw the sea no more, is that I believe that indicates a possible return to the earlier status of the world, in which there was perhaps an ice dome around it. The atmosphere certainly was different. Perhaps this firmament of the waters would filter out cosmic radiation, and we would live centuries instead of just a century, or not even a century, but we would live 800 or 900 years. And the atmosphere was denser and had more oxygen, and it would support those flying dragons, if you will, those flying reptiles of old. They couldn't fly in today's atmosphere, and not only that, but the dinosaurs just wouldn't get enough oxygen to have their masses supported in the atmosphere that we have today. So that's a little bit of my thinking out there, but let's get back into this population and the problem. Too close for comfort. He clearly saw these rats and mice as models for man. Life in an unnatural urban environment of ever-increasing density could result in the complete devastation of humanity. Population Density and Social Pathology, published in 1962 in Scientific American, would continue his experiments for several more decades. He noticed that even when the populations dropped and more space became available, the community never recovered. Even when healthy rodents are placed in a new environment, they never breed successfully again. So the damage is rather permanent. Partly because of the era, his studies hit home. Calhoun's rats seemed to mirror a number of social ills and concerns in a very eventful period in American history. From anthropologists and city planners to landscape architects and lawmakers, all paid close attention. The term behavioral sink leaked beyond academia, becoming part of pop culture. Anyway, the rat race. Making the leap from mouse to man, however, was not so simple. How do you map Calhoun's pathologies onto human society? How do you measure sexual deviancy? Back then in the 50s, it was well understood. Researchers chose venereal disease, illegitimacy, and divorce. That stirred up some controversy. And of course, that's what our keepers want, because they're out to destroy, and they've destroyed the American family pretty much. I mean, if there's one thing you could do to help out the society, it is to support other people's marriages. There's not enough support for marriages. The support is only for the welfare state of single mothers. That stirred up some controversy. How do you measure the breakdown? In maternal behavior, they chose public welfare and child assistance rates. There's other things we could do. For one thing, today, the pedos are ignored in our society. So in other words, the adults stop caring about what happens to the children. We're not going after them. Look at Ghislaine Maxwell. Look at the Epstein stuff. That wasn't the main part of his problems against the United States. That was just part of it. Very small part of it. Go listen to this woman, Whitney, what is her name? Yeah, Whitney Webb, a young woman, I think she's 32. She wrote about 1,000 pages on Epstein. I guess one book was done just to get just to lay the foundation so you could understand what Epstein was doing. And it wasn't merely child sexual stuff and, marketing children and creating massive honeypot schemes to control our government, which is what he did, what they were doing. This is associated with the Israeli Mossad. This is associated with the Rothschilds. That's how they gave us the Federal Reserve System. They've done all of this stuff through, basically, their honeypot schemes. Even Abraham Lincoln had problems. He had 2 children by another woman. And when his wife found out about that, she became kind of insanely jealous, homicidally jealous. But that's another story. So if you want to understand more about the present stuff, Whitney Webb has got it documented pretty well. I can't afford to buy her books. I don't have the time to sit down and read those. I have other things that I do want to read. But she is very brilliant. There are good interviews of her by Beck. I don't care much for Beck. He bothers me. And then Clayton on Redacted does a real good job on it. There are some other interviews of her that are just amazing. People remark about how amazing this woman is because she does the interviews without notes. Well, the fact is that these guys have so much to ask of her, and she's written so much, researched so much, that what notes would she show up with? It's that overwhelming. I suggest you watch every interview of hers that you can while you can. It'll tell you why this nation is the way it is and how dirty it is. And we are ruled by liars, murderers, and thieves. No doubt about it. When they aren't able to buy us off or blackmail us off, they murder us. Okay, back to the article. I don't usually read. People are bored by reading. Anyway, this is what they came down to, because they weren't sure how they were going to equate these rat studies, the laboratories, to human beings. And people found it offensive, to be honest with you. A series of experiments that measured the effects of density on behavior. He measured their stress, discomfort, aggression, competitiveness, and general unpleasantness. When he declared to have found no appreciative negative effects in 1975, the tide began to turn on Calhoun's rat utopia. Friedman's work, Jonathan Friedman, a psychologist, suggested that density was no longer a primary explanatory variable for society's ruin. A distinction was drawn between animals and humans. Well, I think that's bullshit. I think they just had to come up with something so they could crowd us in and cause these problems. You have to understand that this guy, Jonathan Friedman, carried the water for the managers, the owners of the plantation, and gave them the foundational narrative, one of the narratives they need to support their bigger narrative to undermine the family. So Friedman suggested a different conclusion. Moral decay resulted not from density, but from excessive social interaction. Well, he actually's got a point there. Too much social interaction with these dating apps. And look at the number of sex partners that women have today. I ask them all, what's your number? They get upset. They get embarrassed. They usually lie about it and don't tell the truth. Okay, men will lie about it too and not tell the truth, but it's usually the exact opposite. A woman will tell you 1/3 of the actual number, and a man will tell you 3 times the actual number because he wants to have bragging rights. Okay. Not all of Calhoun's rats had gone berserk. But who cares? If you've got a criminal element in there causing trouble for the rest, does it matter? Because you've got those suffering like we have today. Those who managed to control space led relatively normal lives, striking the right balance between privacy and community. So those people who were aggressive enough to go after the limited resources and police themselves and bully the others were winning out, which is kind of the way it is. The right balance between privacy and community would reduce social pathology. It was the unwanted, unavoidable social interaction that drove even fairly social creatures mad, he believed. Culture and upbringing. All the founders were schooled on the Bible. That was their reading primer. We don't allow that anymore. It's not allowed in the schools at all. It's actually barred. You can bring in the religious text from any other group, mind you. Everything is designed to destroy the American family. In case you want to see what our future's like, look at the recent past and the current status of some of our brothers and sisters that are older, been around a little longer, been through it more. Look at South Africa in particular. The reason I like to point South Africa is that we interfered in that country. We meddled in their stuff and we brought them down and we caused this crap they're going through today. Electricity is not a constant thing anymore. It's against the law to hire a white man in South Africa. You have to hire a black man. And unfortunately, the only ones who know how to keep that electrical system of theirs going down there were the older guys that have been around for quite a while, who are all white, and they've been dying away, so they can't keep it going down there. You may think that's a racist statement. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I believe survival is important. And at this point, survival is breaking down along racial lines. And in case you're wondering, they're after us. Why are they after us? Well, they're jealous. They want to rule the roost. They want to pretend they're the chosen people, and they aren't. That's why we went after Germany in World Wars I and World War II, because Germany means genuine. They are generally speaking from the tribe of Judah, who was supposed to hold the scepter, have power until Yahshua the Messiah returns. But these guys that wanted to do an identity theft, and they've used their modern Bibles to enforce that on us. I was going to try to identify the enemy from me using the Bible. I've been through 3 versions pretty well, and the original one still sticks with me to a large extent. I even pulled it out. I don't have a good copy of the King James in the Old English handy. That's somewhere. But I need that to look at that as well, to look at my notes. So it's one thing about these Bibles is you won't be wanting to give them up after you've marked them up and studied with them and spent time with them. And I think that's very important. So you need to understand that psychology has been used by our masters to support the narratives and give us the narratives that support their destruction of the American family and the genocide that they are doing at this point. In case you're wondering, the death rate in the United States is up 13% above normal at this point in time. I have done the math. I didn't do it right. I had the wrong assumptions. Okay. I'm still needing to do some research. However, the basic premises and logic still hold water. And that is that the death rate, the extra death rate, is going to double each year for throughout the decade. So while we're getting 13% more for this last year, next year will be 26% more, and then it will be 52% more, and then it would be more than 100% more. I actually had some diminishing means in there, so it actually was a little bit less each time instead of precisely doubling. But my numbers were off. As far as the autopsies, we have a medical doctor who's on record. He gets all the ones that they want to understand the deaths in, like 5-year-old children, why they're dying. And he says that 30% are from modern medical treatment, a direct result of that treatment. And he's insisting that we do an investigation on those. He has a young man that he's going to be doing an autopsy on. That was the most recent thing that he reported in the videos that I watched. And he had a young man who was a wrestler in the prime of his life. I think he's like 19 years old or 23 years old, somewhere around there. And he's got to go determine the cause of death. Now, mind you, he's being referred questionable deaths, so he's going to have a little bit higher percentage. But 30% of those he's autopsied, he's attributed to one cause of death, and it's not heart disease, okay? You need to go look this stuff up. I'm not going to mention it because it might get me in trouble. I don't need another 3rd strike. They'll take me off. Or whatever it is, 4 strikes, since I got 2 channels. I can't keep track of it. I bet they can keep track of it, though. So, we have an increase in deaths. In case you're wondering, in the United Kingdom, they have an excess death rate above and beyond the normal one of 17%, I believe. Okay, so this is a little higher than the United States. And Israel was one of those countries heavily experimented upon. That's what I call it. Heavily treated, and they've got a higher death rate than normal as well. And that, of course, supports the idea that it's not the Jews that are about the bad guys, because the Jews in Israel are being attacked too. Okay, and as far as the rate in Austria, Europe, it's 23% above normal, which is a tremendous rate. And this is a hidden genocide at this point. We're not allowed to talk about things. We're not allowed to discuss these things. Hell, we can't even talk about peer-reviewed journal articles that are published, that have got some standing. We can't even talk about the science. I went into one of my doctors and they handed me the face mask sign is still out there. And I'm going to be outspoken now. I don't give a shit. I have a degree that's outranks theirs, and they know that. And I walked in, they handed me the face mask, and I just said out loud so everybody in the office could hear me, when are you going to start listening to the science? Because the science shows clearly that, face masks really are only effective when you're trying to control a possible physician infecting his patients. That's where that all came from, so that the guys, when they were doing surgery, wouldn't drop their body fluids inside their patient they were doing surgery on. That's where that stuff started. So they even grumbled they couldn't wait for it themselves, and they're stuck there wearing a face mask all day, which reduces their oxygen intake, which actually dulls them a little bit, and it can cause, it has the potential for doing some permanent brain damage. I'm not saying it does, but there's a possibility there if somebody's not wearing it right, or if they already have a diminished lung capacity and not getting enough oxygen because of other things, it could make things much worse. Anyway, yes, it's raining, quiet, and the wind is blowing. She's not very happy. That's Lorraine barking. She's lounging on the couch over there. She discovered that she can lay on it, so she's claimed it. Yes, I indulge her a little too much, but there's only enough room for her to roll out there and lay down right in front of her kennel. I'd love to be able to identify the enemy clearly, but perhaps that is not as important as identifying the victims, identifying the targets. And that would be the Israelites today that are in dispersion across the whole planet. And so that's why they are after us. And they will genocide us. In the last century, they did, in my estimation, 200 million Christians, white Christians. They did 20 million alone in the Ukraine, 60 million alone in Russia. Well, these are things which I can only give you approximations, and I have to question the data and facts that I have learned over time, because not much is reliable. We live in the age of deception. That's what the characteristics of this age are, according to the folks from Asia. Eastern thought. We live in the age of deception. We're trying to break through into a new age, and that age is supposed to be one that's supposed to be quite good. Getting there appears to be the problem. The United States of America itself started off quite good. Unfortunately, they've created corporations, they've incorporated our government, turned everything into profit, and they bought everybody off. The medical profession is corrupted by the way they dole out the money. Not only that, but even our justice system is corrupted by the way they dole out the money, because it's like welfare for the states. It's none of it's moral or ethical. It should not be legal, but the problem is that we can't see it clearly enough to be able to call them on their crimes and put an end to it. So that is a big problem. So identifying the enemy is a bit of a problem, because we only have the story of one of the fallen angels in this. And it's not Satan. His name was Gadriel. And we know that he was one of the 5 leaders of the fallen angels. How many of them fell? We don't know exactly. Some sources say 200 of them, which means we got another 199 to track down, and their offspring to track down. You know, the thing is that most people think that the devil doesn't exist. I'll tell you this, the devil exists, real DNA, and he's got real DNA children. It's not some spiritualized thing. It's not an analogy. They know who they are, and they know who we are. They read the Bible and work from the Bible. And in case you're wondering, they believe that they've been given, that they want to be God, and they're going to enforce the things that are spelled out in here that we're supposed to suffer from. I should clean my glasses someday. But we are in for a big problem. And the 3 things that are mentioned throughout the Bible are pestilence, the famine, and the sword being war. And those are the 3 things that we will be sentenced by, basically, for our sins, if you will, our national level of sins. So that's what they are doing, is they're doing their best to enforce these sentences upon us. So they're actually playing God, just like Satan wanted to be God. So they're doing it by the book. You need to understand that. And they got a head start on us because they know this book better than you or I do. Maybe. Maybe not. I would like you to buy these Bibles and read them. I'm going to be reading more from it on this channel. I gave a pretty good show on the other channel, the Dr. Kent show. I recommend that you look at it. I realized that I got sidetracked and didn't cover some things that I should have covered or had intended to cover, but it's easy to get off course with this thing. There are a lot of things in here which are just incredible. And there are a lot of things coming which are going to be incredible as well. Let me bring that screen light back up, give us a little bit of background. So there's a lot of things that are going to be happening. And I don't quite understand this stuff. However, here in Revelations 11, the last phrase of verse 18, destroy them which destroy the earth, which reminds me, and I do not know if this is something that came from Yahweh to me, perhaps, or if I read this in the Old Testament, or if I might have misread what was in the Old Testament and came up with this. But that is that the earth groans for her saviors, and it is plural. And so you may be one of the saviors, which means you've got a job to do, that's for sure. And it's going to take a lot of saviors to do this. A lot. And the great dragon was cast out. Revelations 12:9. That old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceives the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. This is what's so weird. Here we are at the end of the Bible, and this is supposed to be the future, right? Yet, here we have Satan being cast out, who deceives the whole world, cast out into the earth, and his angels cast out with him. Now, from what I can tell, the original sin was when the angels met on Mount Hermon and planned it, and they conspired. And what did they conspire to do? Well, it says right here at the other end of the Bible. So you tell me if this thing's given to us in reverse order or what. So I think that we have to be open and flexible so we can understand these things. In order to understand this, we have to get more flexibility in our thinking so that we can at least be open to these different ideas so we can understand it. Genesis chapter 6, my version of the original sin. I don't think the eating of the apple was the original sin. I think that was symbolic, a metaphor, if you will. And it came to pass, 6:1, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all that they chose. And Yahweh said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. All right, it got shortened from 900 years that it was earlier. We're still not getting 120 years, but this is where it is in the Bible. That's how long we should be living, but the evil ones are taking us out early. They're shortening our lives. Genesis continuing on, verse 4, chapter 6. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown, like Hercules, and eventually Odin, who those guys turned into their god. And Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of his thoughts, the thoughts of his heart, was only evil continually. And it repented Yahweh that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And Yahweh said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, and the creeping thing, and the fowls of the air, for it repents me that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of Yahweh. There are more pages dedicated to the flood of Noah in the Bible than to the creation of man. There are 2 creation stories for men in the Bible, and we're having trouble sorting those out and understanding those. Okay? The sons of God, 200 angels gathered on Mount Hermon. In the New Testament, only one mention is there of Yahshua taking the disciples up on Mount Hermon one time. That was the original sin. So I implore you to lay the original sin at the feet of those who have got it coming to them, to the fallen angels. Referred to as the sons of God here. And also note that it says, took them wives, all of which they chose. Well, the act of marriage back then was the sex act. They didn't go to the doggone courthouse or to any place of authority and seek a license, permission slip, and pay for it first. And basically what ended up happening is that all flesh was corrupted from this miscegenation of the fallen angels. And they probably did more mischief than just with the sons of Adam. They probably went after the sons of the earthy man to differentiate itself. And they actually went after the other groups as well. So that's why it's a real mess, and that's why it's about impossible to sort out. But you need to understand that today we are targeted for genocide. This is the ancient hatred from way back then. This is what is coming to a culmination here in just a few years. I don't think it'll even be 2 decades before all this comes to full fruition. I believe that Yahshua was sent here to correct the damage done by the fallen angels in the original sin, primarily, and to show us the way and help us to learn to live the right way. It's going to be an incredible year. I don't know what it's going to be coming down. I don't think it's going to be very good. The evil ones who have stolen all the money and give us fake money, who have deceived the world, are going to be continuing along with their great plan to enslave us further. The beast system. We began as a great nation. We are ending as the beast system. We have been taken over from within and transformed. Let me give you an example. And I'm going to go to my original NIV study Bible to look this up. What I'm looking for is towards the end. Israel gathers with his sons on 2 occasions. On one occasion, he tells his sons of their future and of their characters by describing them as their coat of arms, basically the flags of the nations which they later founded. And so he said quite a bit on that. And he also adopted his 2 boys from his son Joseph, his grandsons. And he gave them a blessing that got crossed a little bit. You know, Joseph wanted his eldest son to get the blessing. And it was a little different. Here we go. Genesis chapter 48. Verse 17. When Joseph saw his father placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he was displeased. So he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to him, "No, my father, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." So we have one that's going to be the great nation, the younger brother. And we have the older one who is going to become a group of nations, a great empire. So my brothers and I will argue about which one became Great Britain and which one became America. But that is where America shows up in your Bible to start off with. You might not like this, but I'm going to go to the Apocrypha. Why? Because the Apocrypha completes the beast system, and that's why we took it out of the Bible, because it brought too much power to the people. And by the way, I'm going to try to look this up in the original King James Version, which was from the Latin Vulgate, which was intended for the masses, apparently, whereas the High Latin was withheld from the masses. There was reason for that, not a good reason. And there are fewer verses in this compared to the modern one. So I'm going to see if I can find it in here. By the way, the order of the books is a little bit different than the order of the books in the modern English, and we're going to go to that as well. I'm going to go to 2 Esdras. I got to have some light for this. It's not easy to read this little tiny print. I'm going to go to 2 Esdras 11. This is where we are today. This is what the United States has morphed into. Chapter 11. Then saw I a dream, and beheld there came up from the sea an eagle, which had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. And I saw, and behold, she spread her wings over all the earth. And all the winds of the air blew on her, and were gathered together. And I beheld, and out of her feathers there grew other contrary feathers, and they became little feathers and small. But her heads were at rest. The head in the midst was greater than the other, yet rested it with the residue. Moreover I beheld, and lo, the eagle flew with her feathers, and reigned upon the earth, and over them that dwell therein. And I saw that all things under heaven were subject unto her, and no man spake against her, no, not one creature upon the earth. This 3-headed eagle, I believe, is the ultimate beast system, of which Washington, D.C. is one of those heads. Another head is the city of London, and the big one in the middle that stays asleep the longest and awakens towards the end, what I'm betting, is the Vatican, Rome. This is very important. It goes into chapter 12. Why is it important? Daniel may have seen some of this and was told not to write about it. Other parts of this, according to the angel talking to Ezra, other parts of this, Daniel wasn't shown or told. So this continues the beast system, and we find it here. I'm working on getting the Apocrypha. That's my goal for this year, is getting the Apocrypha done in modern English in a proper version. This, unfortunately, the Authorized King James Version, is from a source that's inferior, and it's missing it's missing at least 70 verses in one of the chapters. And here, the New Modern English one, we've got the Apocrypha in this book. However, the New Revised Standard Version is, it doesn't have the Spirit. And the books are in a different order. So that's kind of an important thing. And I want to get a better version. We can do that. And if you would like to join us, partner up with us, then give the, send an email in to Name Publishers, or call them up and ask the office there, ask those folks to put you on the list. Tell them you want the Apocryphal books. I need major commitments. I need numbers. If I get 3,000, we can do it. But it's not going to be exactly what I want it to be. It's going to not be on the better paper, for one. If we can get 5,000 to commit to it, then I can get the better paper and do a lot more. So if I get 5,000 people committing to wanting the Apocrypha, we're going to get it. And it'll be about 6 months after those numbers are indicated. Modern English, 2 Esdras 11, in a whole different part of the order. On the second night I had a dream. I saw rising from the sea an eagle that had 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. I saw it spread its wings over the whole earth, and all the winds of heaven blew upon it, and the clouds were gathered around it. I saw out of its wings there grew opposing wings, but they became little puny wings. And its heads were at rest. The middle head was larger than the other heads, but it too was at rest with them. Then I saw the eagle flew with its wings, and it reigned over the earth and over those who inhabit it. And I saw how all things under heaven were subjected to it, and no one spoke against it, not a single creature that was on the earth. Then I saw the eagle rise upon its talons, and it uttered a cry to its wings, saying, Do not all watch at the same time. Let each sleep in its own place and watch in its turn. But let the heads be reserved for the last. Sorry for that light band going across the screen here. Welcome to my humble studio. Verse 39, 36, 36, 37. When I looked, I saw what seemed to be a lion roused from the forest, roaring, and I heard how it uttered a human voice to the eagle and spoke, saying, Listen, and I will speak to you. The Most High says to you, Are you not the one that remains of the 4 beasts that I had made to reign in my world, so that the end of my times might come through them? You, the 4th that has come, have conquered all the beasts that have gone before, and you have held sway over the world with great terror, and over all the earth with grievous oppression. And for a long time you have lived on the earth with deceit. You have judged the earth, but not with truth. For you have oppressed the meek and injured the peaceable. You have hated those who tell the truth, and have loved liars. You have destroyed the homes of those who brought forth fruit, and have laid low the walls of those who did you no harm. Chapter 12, 2 Esdras, verse 10. And he said to me, This is the interpretation of this vision that you have seen. The eagle that you saw coming up from the sea is the 4th kingdom that appeared in a vision to your brother Daniel. But it was not explained to him as I now explain it to you, or have explained it. The days are coming when a kingdom shall rise on the earth, and it shall be more terrifying than all the kingdoms that have been before it. And 12 kings shall reign in it, one after the other. But the second that is to reign shall hold sway for a longer time than any other of the 12. This is the interpretation. They go into this. The angel goes into this in great detail with Ezra. Now, if you can read this and explain it to me, I would really appreciate it. I think we have a beast, a country that started off really well. Our founders knew that they were Israelites. Even, I think it was Thomas Jefferson who wrote up the eulogy, published it for George Washington, saying, "A great man in Israel has fallen." They knew who they were. They knew who we were. They read their Bibles. We don't read our Bibles. We don't know who we are. We are deceived. We're easily deceived. We really need to get a modern, updated version of the Apocrypha. Help me out with that. So call the publisher up, email the publisher, get your name on the list. It might take till the end of this year to get it. Might not be until next year. I do know that a famine is coming. A famine for the word of Yahweh. I'm not looking forward to those days. I think we've actually been through a famine, if you will. The name Yahweh was lost in 275 BC when Ptolemy II took it out of the Bible. We've gotten it back, 2015. I think that's a great gift right there. I want to take it a little bit further, one more step. Help me out with that. Subscribe to the channel, like it, comment, give me some feedback, give me some directions. And if there's something you want me to address, I'd be glad to do that. Otherwise, I'm just going to be out here on my own kind of floundering. I don't think the information I give you is that novel, that unusual. I don't think it's overwhelming. If you want me to crank it up a bit more, I'll do that. You know, whatever you really want me to do, I'll probably take that direction. I'll certainly take it to heart. You know, I've got one more Bible to dig up out of somewhere. I don't know where it is right now, but I've got King James, Old English Apocrypha, Modern English with the Apocrypha, and good study notes in that. It's decent. You can't get it anymore except used. Get it if you can. The NIV, the Original Study Bible in 1983, which is the best of the NIV Bibles, is consistently deteriorated. The last I heard, they were changing the pronouns to be gender neutral. You know, it's nice to identify the gender of the person speaking so you have half a chance to understand who it refers to. Can you imagine when they take out the gender from the pronouns, that the reference are going to be harder, it's going to be harder to follow. Then we got this one too, in Modern English, proper name version. I've got a parallel translation somewhere that I want to dig out. Hopefully I'll get to that soon. And that'll help us to go through all of this stuff together. I have a parallel translation with 4 different versions in it. It helps to look at those in order to get some enlightenment as to what the Bible might really be trying to tell us. It's hard to read it in context because we're not living in that context, in that period. So, the other channel, go to Dr. John Taylor Kent to see the Dr. Kent show. You will see that it was show number 16, having to do with the 16th Amendment, which was never voted upon. And if you don't know what the 16th Amendment is about, then go look it up. I haven't covered much in the Bible here today. I haven't done any of what I was inclined to do in my planning. I'm just going to try to get things out as the Spirit prompts me at the moment. Every time I try to come up with some wonderful study, it goes a little bit haywire. I did read to you. I don't like reading studies, psychological studies to you, but just to give you an idea that things can get worse and will get worse. Right now we seem to be going through a period of hypersexuality, and when things really start to collapse, it's going to be asexual. And we're going to see more death. We're going to see more crime. That's what they're dialing up for us in society. That's what our keepers are doing. They run several experiments at a time on us, and they have everything geared so they can take us down, and they can get us to think whatever it is they want to think, and get us to do a lot of what we're doing. It's absolutely horrible how much sway they have over us. We cannot fight our way out of this very well physically right now. We should defend ourselves should the need arise. But the fact is that we're stuck fighting this psychologically, spiritually. That's about all we have. Yet the promise is in there. If we repent, Yahweh repents as well, and he doesn't judge us so harshly. If we fail to do that, this war that's going on in the Ukraine is really headed for us. They're after us in particular. They've diminished our ability to fight war tremendously. We can't even make our own pharmaceuticals anymore in this country. We have to depend upon the industry over in China for that. We don't have the heavy industry anymore. We really cannot fight a war. We don't have the industries. That started with the Clinton administration. Well, it started with Tricky Dick Nixon. He screwed us up along with his Secretary of State, Kissinger. And if I was president today, the first thing I would do would be to impose tariffs and duties at the borders. And it might not be so insignificant. I would love to see us go back to the 30%. That might be too much at one time. Maybe we start off with 2%, 3%, 7%, 10%, 15%, and then increase it over time so we can get up to 30% again. We require the Congress to spend only the money it has collected in the previous year from tariffs and duties rather than from a graduated communist income tax. We require Congress to settle all of its debts using real money, using silver coins and gold. Yeah, they owe us quite a bit. As far as the Federal Reserve System, I think Senator Ron Paul had the perfect solution to that. His solution was we tax them retroactively since their inception in 1913 at 105% of their profits. I think that's the way to do it. You may say, well, that's not fair. That's more than the profits. No. You need to understand. They required us to pay back for money that didn't exist, which required us to go bankrupt all the time so they could predate upon us for the last century, more than a century. So we need to stop their fraud, stop their thieving completely. And these people in D.C. are putting on a show for you to keep you preoccupied. The enemy is clearly identified in the Bible. Read it, discover it for yourself. May Yahweh bless America once again. May we, the people of America, bless Yahweh. May we turn to him, read his word, do what he tells us to do. Ask him for guidance, that he will show us his will and give us the means whereby we can accomplish his will. That, I think, will go a long ways to helping us recover our republic and help to save us from the coming genocide. Yahweh bless.